Boomerocity, and man, I have a classic for you. I'm so excited about this. 4 years ago, I interviewed Colin Blunstone of the Zombies, and since then, they have been very, very busy. They have come out with a documentary. They are re-releasing their monumental album as far as quality and importance of content, which was Odessey and Oracle. And that's where the song Time of the Season came out from, or is part of. And so they're remastered that and releasing it. And they're coming out with a box set, or Colin is, and he's going on tour. So we had a lot to talk about. Had a blast. He was in England. I'm here in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, and we had a blast talking. And there was so much news he had to share with us, and a lot of story, a lot of history. And man, it was just a lot of fun. So please, while you're listening to it, would you go ahead and hit like? And if you're not already a subscriber, would you please hit subscribe? It's not going to cost you anything, but it sure helps Boomerocity out a lot. And please share this interview with your classic rock fans that you have in your social and family networks. They're going to love this interview. So without any further ado, here is my second, and what I hope is not my last, interview with Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Colin Blunstone. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care.
Hello.
Hello, Colin. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Randy? You good?
I'm doing great. It's been almost 4 years. Was it something I said?
No, not at all. No, we mustn't leave it so long till we rendezvous again.
That's right. That's right. We gotta keep this thing going here. So, wow, you're looking great. And I've got to ask before we get into the questions, how's Rod doing? Is he improving?
Yeah, he's doing good actually. He's
Good.
he's really well. He's definitely decided he doesn't want to tour anymore, and I think it's probably, it's best to put your health first. I think it's probably the right decision. But he's fine. Yeah, he's made a great recovery.
Good deal. Good deal. You're clicking in from England, I assume.
I am, yeah. I'm probably about 30 miles southwest of London at the moment. So this is home, where this is where I live.
Well, thank you for welcoming me into your home. So I'm greeting you from the Smoky Mountains way down south, as one of your other British mates had said one time or two in a song. So
okay, right.
Listen, I want to ask you a few questions about the documentary, about the Odessey, the album Odessey and Oracle remaster, and of course your tour coming up. And first of all, before we get into that, I wanted to ask you, how much time do we have? Because I want to be respectful of your time, and that'll guide what questions I ask you.
No, I'm fine. You're my last interview, so time's not a pressing issue.
Okay, good deal. So on this doc, I watched it when it first came out and absolutely loved it. It was to me, it was a lot of fun. Now, as a baby boomer, I'm kind of in that mid-range of brothers and sisters, those born right after the war, which gave us that moniker baby boomer. I'm kind of in that midpoint. I'm about to turn 66 next week. And so then there's the later baby boomers and all that. But for me, I felt like I was watching a documentary about a band, about songs that I heard at first as a youngster, and that would be the older brother and sister equivalents were really raving about. And so for me, it was a big joy to watch and listen to. I learned a lot from it that I didn't know. And so my hat's off to you and the team that put that together. It's very, very well done.
Well, thank you very much. And so much of that is due to the director, Robert Schwartzman. He just did a fantastic job. He came to us about 3 years ago with the idea of doing it. And he managed to find so many old clips of us even before we were making records. I didn't know these clips existed. So the first time I saw the film, I was in for a few shocks, because there were that there were bits of film, as I say, I'd never seen before. Um, but it was a wonderful experience, quite emotional when you see your life um, concertinaed into an hour and a half, and you're sitting there, and yeah, it's quite an emotional experience, but very exciting as well. And I think overall, all the guys involved in making the documentary have just done such a wonderful job.
How involved were you in the making of it, aside from sitting there and looking pretty for the cameras whenever they wanted to ask you questions?
Well, there were some very long interview sessions. I can remember one in this room where Robert sat talking to me for 5 hours.
Whoa.
But there were other instances as well. We had another long session in New York, and then other shorter, shorter things as well. So I'm so sorry. Um, so, I mean, yeah, our contribution was really just answering questions. It was all down to Robert and his team um, finalizing the documentary. The whole idea of it was, but I love it because it starts when we're really young, and well, for the main part, and it shows our career ending up with us being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I think it's quite a bumpy road to get there, but it's just so nice that you see a final validation of us being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I hope that people will take hope from that, because sometimes, in all businesses, certainly in the music business, there are bitter disappointments along the way. But if you've just got that tenacity and just keep going, then maybe you need a little bit of luck. Who knows where you're going to end up? It's
Right.
life's full of surprises.
Well, just like, I mean, for me, outside looking in, I look at, what appears to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears to me like there's this ever increasing appreciation and popularity of Odessey and Oracle, as well as the band itself. And then to
Yeah,
get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which, don't get me started on those guys. I mean, I love the Rock Hall, but I don't understand their process of why certain bands take forever to get in and others never even make it.
I
But
know.
for me as a fan, I looked at it all and go, wow, it's about time that the album gets the respect that it deserved when it was first released.
Yeah,
And secondly, that you're finally in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, you guys should have been. I mean, I'm not trying to discount or minimize or rain on the parade of such a big accomplishment, but with all due respect, you guys deserved it before a lot of others did. And but I'm glad you're finally in there is the main thing. How did that
well,
all feel to you?
I felt wonderful because remembering that the original band, finished in 1967, and I think there was a general feeling in the band that we were unsuccessful. That's why we finished in 1967 overall. So to get this belated acknowledgement was incredibly energizing and uplifting. It was and so totally unexpected. Especially the first time we were nominated, because we were nominated 3 or 4 times before we were inducted, which I think is quite usual. I think very few people are nominated and get in first time. But you start to think it's not going to happen for you after 3 or 4 times of being nominated. Um, and eventually it did. It was a really wonderful experience. We performed in front of 17,000 people, and it was televised as well. And of course, the great and the good of the music industry were there. So it was a very stimulating experience, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Very
Um,
cool.
and it is interesting because belatedly, Odyssey and Oracle, I think it had been out for 10 or 20 years before people started noticing it. Notably, triggered by people like Tom Petty in the States, crusaded tirelessly for Odyssey and Oracle and the Zombies. And in this country, Paul Weller is always talking about Odyssey and Oracle and has named it as his favorite all-time album. And gradually, through word of mouth, it started to get some attention, and eventually Rolling Stone named it as one of the top 100 albums of all time. This is an album that was pretty much ignored when it was first released, with one or two
Wow.
exceptions. There was a fine DJ over here called Kenny Everett who loved it, and also a very good reviewer called Penny Valentine who loved it. But the media in general pretty much ignored it, really. It's such a strange story. And then with no one's promoting it, no one's marketing it, except through word of mouth, it starts to become accepted as a fairly important piece of work.
Hmm. Well, the songs from it, I mean, good Lord, there's, you know, you hear it, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's made it into a movie or two, and
So many movies and commercials too. It's
yeah,
extraordinary. Yeah, it's
but
extraordinary.
you would think from that the album would be like the all-time biggest selling album just from, I mean, because the moment that, a song comes on from that album on the radio or on your, that sounds kind of antiquated today, but on our phones through whatever streaming service we get, I mean, it's like our ears perk up right away, and it's like there's a familiar friend, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
but then I was stunned when I was reading up on all this a couple years ago that just how flat the album did in the beginning. It makes no
That's
sense to
absolutely
me.
true. It sells far more now. What is it? 60 years later, something like that.
Almost, yeah.
It sells far more now than it ever did when it first came out. It might be something to do with the fact that you probably know that Al Cooper, who formed Blood, Sweat, and Tears, he was the first person to really push Odyssey and Oracle. CBS had the album and they weren't even going to release it. Al Cooper went in and saw Clive Davis on his. This is Al Cooper had become a producer at CBS. His first day of work, he went in to see Clive Davis. Very brave of him, because Clive was a hugely powerful man, and
Hmm.
he said, "Whatever it costs, we have to get this album, Odyssey and Oracle." And Clive Davis said, "We already own Odyssey and Oracle. We don't have to pay anything. We own it." But we weren't even going to release it. It wasn't even going to be released if it hadn't been for Al Cooper. And then later, they released two singles. And then Al Cooper came to our rescue again and said, "You have to release Time of the Season." And slowly but surely, it was a hit. It was, by now, the band had been finished 18 months or 2 years or something like that. And I said, because there's no internet. So I started getting phone calls from friends in the States and saying, "It's picking up airplay." And I thought, that can't be true. That's all over. It's finished. And then
Hmm.
phone calls are coming. It's gone into the bottom of the charts. But I think it took weeks and weeks to go up the charts. And you keep thinking each week that it's gonna disappear. But eventually, in Cashbox, Time of the Season was number one. In Billboard, it's number two or number three, I think. Even then, Odyssey and Oracle wasn't really a chart record. It made Billboard 1 week in the charts at number 98. So it's still, the album still had its own battle to fight over the years. But as I said, it sold consistently over something like 60 years. Don't think it ever charted, but it never stopped selling. And now it very much sells more than it does when it first came out. It's an
Well,
extraordinary
and
story, really.
yeah, and I don't think, unless people are really into the nuts and bolts of how the record industry used to work compared to where it is now, I don't think a lot of fans fully appreciate even that accomplishment, because even back then the labels had their machinery in place that would push albums to get across the radio stations, and
I
there was
know.
the payola scandals and all that, and you guys accomplished what you did organically, and that's amazing.
Certainly with this album, I think that CBS probably were never fully committed to this album because it was issued on a subsidiary called Date Records. It wasn't
Hmm.
on the main label. And I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of the politics of CBS at that time, but you'll probably find that the promotion was underfunded and there
To
wasn't
say the
any,
least.
yes, and there wasn't any real commitment. And it just had to find a way to the public. by itself. I've often thought of Odessey and Oracle as almost a living entity. It sort of fought its way through on its own
Mhm.
to get some kind of public recognition. No, apart from Al Cooper and
Mhm.
occasionally the guys in the band, no one has pushed this album. It seems to have done it on its own.
Yep.
Maybe it's because it's a zombie album. You see, that might be part of the mystery. The zombies are working in the promotion of this album. There's a sort of a little bit of fantasy about this album, I think.
Well, in the remastering of this, tell fans what's behind that, what brought that about, and what do you hope, besides just the sales of it, what do you hope fans and new fans especially glean from this new release of it?
Well, and I sometimes think it's sort of tied to a little bit of a celebration, really, because the rights in our masters reverted to us quite recently. And
Ah,
so we now own the records. And
congrats.
yeah, and we signed a distribution deal. And the conversations got around to this album was originally recorded in mono.
Yep.
When the masters were taken to CBS, it was just when stereo was becoming, I don't know about popular, but people were getting interested in stereo. And CBS's response were that the album's fine, but we'd like a stereo mix. They had given us such a small recording budget that it was very difficult for us to go back, especially in Abbey Road, which is an expensive studio, to go
Mhm.
back and get a stereo mix. So it had to be done very quickly, very economically. And I think most people would agree that probably some things were missed when it became a stereo mix. Obviously, we heard it when we finished it. We heard it in mono. The stereo thing was done a little bit later, and famously on "This Will Be Our Year," there's a horn section on there that because of the way it was recorded, when it went to stereo, the horn section disappeared. And I think
Oh,
maybe there were lots of subtleties that got lost when it was recorded in stereo. So I just think it's just a wonderful thing to go back to how we heard it in the first place. It's the mono mix, and of course it's been remastered, so it's sharp, it's full, it's rich, and I think people will appreciate the people that already know Odyssey and Oracle will appreciate it even more when they hear it in this form.
I would imagine it would wind up starting to be picked up by more shows, commercials, things like that, with the new mix that would, that seems to, whenever there's a remaster, there always seems to be an uptick in sales and interest on whatever's being remastered. And I would imagine
Absolutely.
that's going to be the case for you guys.
I do hope so. And in fact, with the execution of this new deal, there are going to be four zombie albums released in the next 12 months. So Odyssey and Oracle is the
Wow.
first one. Yeah, Odyssey and Oracle is the first one. And then they're going to release the Zombies' first album, which was called Begin Here. Then there's going to be an album of A-sides. And then the fourth album is going to cover a period when the Zombies finished and Time of the Season was a hit after we'd finished. And there was big pressure on all of us from the record company to supply them with more material. And we had some pretty good demos that we'd recorded that we'd never finished. And so there was a period around the time when A Time of the Season was a hit when we were readdressing these demos and making them into masters. And some of them worked out really well. Over the passing of time, you forget how good some of the original songs were that at the time we discarded. And so there'll be an album of those songs. And also, for the really perceptive, you'll see the Zombies moving into Argent, which is Rod Argent's next band,
Right.
because some of those tracks were probably finished with more Argent than the Zombies. They were all started with the Zombies, but they're moving towards Argent all the time. So it's quite interesting to watch that happen.
I bet. Gosh. Well, so in the remastering, was there any What was like the biggest impactful memory or surprise that came about while you guys were working on the remastering? Was there something like where you and Rod kind of go, "Wow, I forgot about that." Do you remember that, or anything along those lines?
Well, the two things that really struck me, one is this brass section suddenly started playing in This Will Be Our Year, which I'd forgotten about. The other thing is that in the first track, Care of Cell 44, there was an edit done in the last verse. So from memory, it's not the whole verse has been taken out. The verse has been halved. And so I'm listening to the new version of the album and singing along with it. And suddenly something that I thought I knew really, really well, and the verse doesn't finish the way I remember it because I've been listening to the stereo version. I go, well, what's happened? It's gone into a chorus uh, eight bars earlier or 4 bars earlier. I can't remember what it is, but there's an edit there that I'd completely forgotten about. So they're the two things that I remember: the edit in Carousel 44 and the brass section in This Will Be Our Year. Completely forgotten about them. And so it was a
Wow.
little bit of a shock, but they both work really well. Having said that, I think they both work really well.
Going back to the documentary, how do you think the documentary captures, for lack of a better word, the essence of the Zombies for both longtime fans and new audiences?
Well, I think it tells the story very accurately, and sometimes in the voices actually of the band. Everyone was interviewed really extensively. Um, so I think everyone's told their own story in the documentary, and it's also illustrated by so much vivid footage, which, as I said before, was a big surprise to me that they managed to find all this footage from the 60s. There's also film of the later incarnations of the band. There's film of us at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which we discussed briefly earlier, which also brings back wonderful memories of a very special day. So I think that just by watching the film, people will understand the driving force and the aims of the band a lot better than they would before they saw the documentary. I mean, Rod speaks very eloquently all the way through the film, and I always thought of the Zombies as Rod's band, really. Rod is the leader of the band, he's the cornerstone of the band, he's the main songwriter, closely followed by Chris. He also used to arrange all the songs. He was very much the musical director of the band, and I think that comes through in the documentary as well. The Zombies, I always thought of the Zombies as Rod's band.
One thing that, well, before I get to that, I'll ask you this. Are there any behind the scenes moments during the making of this documentary that you particularly cherish or found very moving? I have one that I would like to share with you, but I want to
Yeah.
hear yours first.
Well, one that's very interesting is the opening scene, which is Rod and I in a big church in New York. And when I say big, it's like a cathedral. But no one told us what we were doing in that church. And the thought crossed my mind that we'd actually gone there to get a blessing on the documentary. I had no idea why we were in this church. And the director, Robert, said, "Okay, guys, listen, I want you to go up in the organ loft and I want you to sing The Way I Feel Inside." And that's the first we knew of what we were going to do. And of course, Rod's playing this huge cathedral organ, but I haven't got a microphone. I'm standing next to him with this thunderous organ, and I'm trying to sing this quiet, introverted, almost whispered vocal of the beautiful song, The Way I Feel Inside. So it was interesting, exciting, and a bit scary, really, because I wasn't quite sure what was going on. But when you see it in the film, I think it's really effective, and it's a great way to start the film. The first edit I saw, it didn't start that way, but this is the final edit now starts with that scene in the church, and that was very interesting that afternoon.
I can imagine. The thing I I took away, I remember, first of all, I saw this when it first came out, so it's been out a couple months already, and I didn't have time to watch it again before this interview. But as I recall, it seemed to me that there were some pretty raw emotional things about the documentary, particularly pertaining to, childhood, events and things of that nature. And I at one point in that film, it seemed to it came across to me at least that it was hitting you pretty hard. Was that a is that a fair an accurate interpretation of what took place on there, or how was that for you?
Yeah, I think that's quite fair. I know the part you're talking about. Um, I was encouraged to tell a story I'd never told before. This was just a conversation. It was nothing to do with the director Robert at all. It was a conversation that was going. Rob was actually being interviewed, and someone was talking to me and saying, "What? Try and find a story you've never told before." And I thought I would tell that story, which I'll go into in a little bit. Firstly, I'd never told it before, but I hope that by telling it, because it's a bit of a taboo, and I hope that by telling it, I perhaps could even just give one person a bit of hope if they're in a similar situation, because it doesn't have to be a taboo. As you know, I was adopted, and in in fact, my birth father was an American serviceman who was over here in the war, and he went back to America, and it was a very difficult, challenging situation. Obviously, I don't know much about this except I have lots of letters that I've read, and I told the story because I just think that three people, my birth mother and my adopted parents, were just so wonderful in the way that they got together. And especially in those days, this is a very difficult situation. And it wasn't of their making. There's a lot more that I could have said. But remember, there's just been a war, and there was a lot going on. And they made so many sacrifices to give me a wonderful childhood. And I hoped that I could recognize that in what I was saying. And also, as I said before, just give a little bit of hope to people who might be in a similar situation. That was the idea behind speaking so frankly.
Well, that I know that it will definitely touch people. I mean, I'm not adopted, but I know several people who are, and um, in a couple circumstances, the situations weren't handled as well as yours sounds like it was, and it can mess with people. It really
I
can,
think
and
I think it possibly can. And I think one of the reasons is because we don't talk about it. As I
yeah.
said, it's a bit of a taboo. I'll tell you what, my parents told me very early on that I was adopted. And they said, always remember, you're special because we chose you. And
Hmm.
I felt sorry for people that weren't adopted. When I was young, even now, I've listened, you poor people, you weren't chosen. I was. And I think that's the kind of approach to take.
Yeah.
I know it's a slightly light-hearted approach. I know, but
But
maybe
it's
we should all
true.
be a bit. I know, but when also we should be a bit more light-hearted about it. It's a challenging situation, but if you get people who are committed and supportive, it doesn't have to be a disaster. It's
Yeah.
probably not an ideal situation. I'll be the first one to say that, but it's not the end of the world. It's not, and it's sometimes I think that society's views on things like this don't really help. And perhaps if we can talk about it a bit more openly, then the situation will change. And people, as you were saying, not everyone accepts the situation they're in as well as perhaps I do. It could make it easier for them,
Yeah.
because there is so much prejudice. Well, there's prejudice about everything, but prejudice about this, and it's just unnecessary. It's totally unnecessary.
Completely agree. But I'm glad you felt inspired to share that in the documentary, and I think it's a conversation still worth having. And whether it's people late in life like we are, or kids I mean, I know of one situation where a girl thought her father was her biological father and he wasn't. And when she found out, it was as she was an early teen, and it messed with her. It really did. And it didn't
Yes,
need
I can
to,
imagine. Yeah.
but it did. I mean, I think it's all in the wisdom of the adults who are handling the circumstances of that can go a long way. But then it also takes wisdom to come back around on situations where it wasn't handled wisely. And so, I think what you're saying and doing, Colin, is probably the most important thing you could do in life, even over and above your music, even though you can use the music to give you the platform to speak from. And I think it's incredibly important, your input into those situations. Who knows the lives you can touch just from that one story alone.
Well, I do hope so. And I know it's obviously a very serious subject, but I just like to say to people, don't make a bigger deal of it than it is.
Hmm.
If everyone just gets on with it, it happened. Life
Yeah.
happens. And if you just get on with it, it is a challenging time. Not for me. It was a challenging time for everyone else in this
Hmm.
in this situation. Um, but if everyone just gets on with it, I think that there can be a good outcome. I had a wonderful childhood and very loving parents, and I'm eternally grateful to them. And I just like to share that with people, particularly people who might be in a similar situation.
Well, again, I'm glad that you shared that. And like I said, I'm not directly impacted by anything like that, but I know a lot of people who are, and I'm glad you shared that because I think it can be a healing and ministering thing that you've done there. One last thing about Odyssey and Oracle before we get to my next group of questions. Is there, I mean, everybody knows the album. I mean, of those that are familiar with it, they obviously know the album and all that. Is there a particular song on that from the remaster that you would like to point people's attention to maybe give it a lot closer listen for those of us who are familiar with the album? And then also, is it the same song or a different song that you would point new fans to say, hey, if you listen to this one, you're really going to love the rest of the record?
Well, if I can answer it in this way, when the record was completed, I thought the most commercial and possibly the best song on there was Care of Cell 44. I really thought that was such a commercial track. And it was released as a single, certainly in the UK, and it wasn't a hit. So, what do I know? That might be a good starting point, Care of Cell 44. A song that I've grown to appreciate more as time's gone by is Hung Up on a Dream, which, if you get a vinyl copy, that's the last track on the first side. I think the lyric of that song is so wonderful. It's so descriptive. I think Rod was going through an incredibly hot songwriting period right here. And it lasted for a few years as well. And I love the lyric of Hung Up on a Dream. So that's another song maybe your listeners could check out.
Well, the final thing I'll touch on about the album, the Odyssey and Oracle, is you and Rod, when you stopped in Knoxville, Tennessee, not long after I interviewed you the last time. Um, Everybody was still protective because of COVID and all that, but you were kind enough to allow me to send Odyssey and Oracle and Rest in Peace or RIP back, and you and Rod signed those. And you can't see because of the virtual background I have here, but I have Odyssey and Oracle over my shoulder, hanging up on the wall, and then Rest in Peace is on the other side of the bookcases that you also can't see, hung up, proudly framed and displayed for any rare visitors to my office and studio can see. So it's up there on my Hall of Fame of signed records there. So I
Fantastic.
thank you so much for doing that for me. I appreciate it. Now, I understand that you got a box set coming out. Tell fans about that.
I have. It's a box set of a live show that I did last November where
Oh,
I played live my first solo album, and it has a connection with Odyssey and Oracle, really. My first solo album is called 1 Year, and it was produced by Rod Argent and Chris White. It was engineered by Peter Vince, who was one of the main engineers on Odyssey and Oracle. It was recorded in Studio 3 of Abbey Road, which is where Odyssey and
oh,
Oracle was recorded. So there's a big connection with Odyssey and Oracle and my first solo album, 1 Year. And for the first time ever, I played it, the complete album from beginning to end, on a tour last year. And we filmed and recorded the last concert, which was in the Union Chapel in London. It's a wonderful venue, very, very atmospheric. And it was a great evening. And yeah, we recorded it and filmed it. And that's coming out in November this year.
very cool. What what one song can fans look forward to hearing that you're especially proud of on that box set that you want them to maybe go to right away as soon as it comes out?
Well, I tell you, in this country, a song written by Denny Lane called
Oh,
"Say You Don't Mind" was a big hit, and it's a very strange hit because it's a 21-piece string orchestra. There's no electric instruments, no drums, no percussion, nothing. It's just a string orchestra playing quite an unusual sort of Bartok-esque arrangement of Denny Lane's beautiful song. And it was quite a big hit in the UK. It was a top 20 single here. It wasn't a hit in America. So that might be a good track to go to it might, if you're not familiar with that kind of music, it might be a little bit of a shock to the system, but if you listen to it a few times, it's a great song, and it's a very unusual arrangement. For me personally, there's a song on there called Smoky Day. I think it's the third track on the first side. It's a Chris White song. I didn't particularly like it when we recorded it. I didn't particularly want it to go on the album. I don't know what I was listening to, because it's the most beautiful song, just about the relationship between the songwriter and a smoky day as the day goes by and the night comes on. It's not really a boy girl situation, but it's talking. The songwriter is talking about the smoky day as if it was a person, and it's so imaginative. And again, it's a wonderful lyric written by Chris White, and I was thrilled to perform that live. Especially as I hadn't even wanted it to go on the album in the first place, and now it's one of my favorite songs of all time.
funny how that works out. So I'm told too you've got a tour coming up. Tell fans about that.
Oh yeah, with my solo band, I'm going to be touring the UK in May, the whole of the month. We may be going to Europe afterwards. It's not confirmed yet, so I'm not sure about that. But the whole of May, we're going to be playing in the UK, and we're going to end up at the Union Chapel again, which is where
Uh,
we filmed and recorded the album last year. It's a wonderful venue, and yeah, we're going to finish the tour at that same venue at the end of May. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's a wonderful band. It's a great band, and we play lots of solo things, but this time round we're going to play lots of zombie cuts as well, because there's no zombie band now. So
yeah.
I want these songs to be heard, and it quite concerns me that if I don't play them, I'm not sure what other bands will be playing. I'm not talking about Time of the Season, She's Not There, but perhaps more obscure tracks, beautiful songs that have been written by Rod Argent and Chris White. And it does worry me that those songs might not be played. So really want to make an effort to perform those songs, when I'm touring. And I think there will be a lot of zombie songs in those concerts.
I would like to think that maybe there can even be a zombie endorsed tribute band that, because I kind of see that beginning to happen with the band Chicago. There's a couple good ones out there. Pink Floyd the same way, but maybe there can be a band that you guys endorse that can
Maybe
take the
so.
mantle and go with it. That would be pretty nice.
Well, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? We've
Yeah.
had bands before touring as the Zombies, but I think they were a pretty mixed bunch. I'd like to think there's someone. I'd like to think there's someone who can, you know, get their tonsils round the songs and, and give a good portrayal of how they're meant to sound, and then yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah,
I
I
tell you
think
a
so.
secret about the Zombies songs, remembering that I didn't write many of them. They're a lot more tricky to play than you might think. Particularly Rod had got a great habit of writing quite complicated songs, but making them sound simple, and they're not simple. And I think that sometimes puts bands off because they can't work out how to play them because they're
Hmm.
very sophisticated, particularly the keyboard parts, you know. And hopefully, yeah, someone will get a handle on it and they'll get out there and play these beautiful songs.
That would be that would be wonderful because I think a whole new generation would benefit from hearing from them. Is there, speaking of touring, are there any cities or venues that, especially on the tour coming up, that hold special meaning for you?
Well, this Union Chapel venue, I know I've already spoken about it twice, but that is really special. Otherwise, a, a lot of the dates we're doing, I've never played before. We're with a
Mm.
comparatively new agency, and new agencies tend to book you into new venues. So it's going to be a wonderful adventure for me because we're going all over the country, right the way up to Scotland, and most of the venues I've never played before. So
Oh.
next time we talk, I'll let you know how it worked out because I'm not familiar with a lot of these venues. That's great. You don't want to keep playing the same places all the time, and
That's
so
true.
I'm really pleased about that.
Do you enjoy interacting with the audience today in a way that's different, say, from your early years in the band? Is that has that changed much? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think it has, you know, and also remembering that this is my solo band, so I'm freer to interact with the audience than perhaps I was with the Zombies. And yeah, I like to tell stories and try and get reactions from them, and of course I'm choosing the music as well. I'm choosing the set list, so in a way, it is a different experience being a solo artist to being a member of a band. It's a different experience in many ways. Some very subtle, nuanced ways, but I guess the buck stops with you when it's a solo operation, as opposed to in a band, you're a bit more sheltered from
Hmm.
the more challenging aspects of touring.
Yeah, I could see where that would be the case. Two more questions for you. What do you hope fans take away from the documentary, the remastered Odyssey and Oracle album, and your live shows combined?
Well, I hope that they um, rediscover or appreciate more the wonderful songs that the Zombies recorded. Um, I think that would be brilliant if there's a resurgence of interest in the Zombies, which to some extent there already has. But I mean, it would be great if more people were brought to the Zombies repertoire, those great songs, and of course on the with the solo show, there's quite a few different tracks in there. Some that I've written, some that have been hits, but other people have written. And the main thing is when you're touring, you want to bring pleasure and a wonderful experience to people who come to see the show. And of course, you hope that then they'll want to come back and see a show again. And then I can refresh it and put other songs in there, some Zombies and some mine. So with the solo band, I hope people come and have a wonderful experience and want to learn more about the Zombies and hopefully more about my solo career as well.
Very good. Very good. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. This doesn't count as my last question. But is the documentary going to be available on DVD sometime in the future? Because I'd love to have
I
my
think,
own copy for my library.
yes, I believe it is. I don't have any details, but you know, it's on Amazon Prime, isn't it?
Right.
And one other uh, platform as
I
well
can't
at the
remember.
moment.
I think Apple. I think it's on Apple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It always was the plan that they would first of all, it was It was shown first of all at South by Southwest, and then the idea was to play it in as many cinemas as possible. An
Mhm.
amazing amount of cinemas played it, and I came over and helped promote that as well. So it was a very staged release. They were very conscious of releasing, first of all, the premiere, then playing it in cinemas. Now it's available online. And the fourth part of this release is when you can buy it in shops. I'm sure within the next few months, you will be able to buy it in shops.
I hope so because I want it. I want to be able to watch it. Just I don't know. I can always pull it up, but something about having my own copy that I can open up, like just like playing records. I
I
prefer to
know it's a
play
similar thing.
versus
Yes.
stream. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So, final question, and I think I touched on this the last time you and I spoke, and I mean for it to be a more of an uplifting question, not macabre. But guys our age, we start realizing that there's fewer years ahead of us than there are behind us. So we start thinking about our mortality, our impact on life. Have we, what's left for us to do, those kinds of things. And so the way I typically ask it is when you step off of the great tour bus of life up at the great gig in the sky, to borrow from Pink Floyd, how do you want to be remembered and what do you hope your legacy is?
Well, I mean, as a person, I hope people will remember me as being um, honest and kind and tenacious. I think I'd like people to remember me as tenacious. Um, as a performer, I hope people will remember me as someone who really tried to perform to the best of their abilities, and hopefully they'll think that I achieved at least in some of my efforts. It would be great to be remembered as a performer of some standing, of course, but that's for other people to decide, not for me. But
Well, I
incidentally,
decide that.
incidentally, I was just going to say, as you realize you've got more years behind you than you have in front of you, it's a really good reason to get out there and do things. Don't I would just say to people, don't sit about wondering about what the future holds for you. Get out there and do things. It's so important in life in general. But as you get older, you've just you don't have forever. So you just
Right.
have to get out there and do it.
Yep. I totally agree. Well, Colin, as always, this is a lot of fun. I look forward to talking to you again as the other projects come out. Maybe we could do another one or two of these. And boy, if you come over here to the States, I hope I get to catch your show and bump elbows with you in person this time. And in the meantime, stay healthy as you have been and safe, and give my best to Rod too. I know he and I haven't met, but I think the world of you guys. Thank you for all the years of great music, and I look forward to hearing a lot more from you.
Cheers, Randy. It's been great talking to you, mate. All the very best.
Likewise.
Okay.
All right, take care. Bye bye.
Bye.